Hello and welcome to Talk Thursday. I'm Maria Ressa. Today we're joined by San Francisco-based lawyer Rodel Rodis. He is the president of US Pinoys for Good Governance. Rodel, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Well,
Glad I'm here.
You've taken a key role in organizing Filipinos. Tell me, what do these elections look like from the United States? Why are the 2013 elections important?
Well, they are very, obviously very important in terms of pushing issues, and for much of us, we're very dismayed by the caliber of the candidates. We found that there were better candidates. There were better candidates in 2010. Unfortunately, they lost. But the candidates we've seen so far perpetuate the same old, same old. So we're very disappointed. Nonetheless, we'd like to get good people in and kick bad people out. So to the extent that we can have some influence in changing the candidates or those who win, we'd like to be involved in that.
How would you describe the Philippines today? How do we look like from outside?
Well, you know, there's still a lot of corruption, but there's been a lot of positive changes. I mean, the image of the Philippines and of the political system in the Philippines has risen tremendously in the esteem of Congress, in the esteem of people in Washington, but also down to the grassroots and the different level. I mean, the ordinary Americans who knew anything about the Philippines had a very negative view of corruption and people who were elected. And then the election of President Aquino was a game changer in terms of the attitude towards the Philippines. And the impeachment and removal of Chief Justice Corona did tremendously. There was always an acceptance that you can't change the system. There's a culture of impunity in place. But the fact that you could remove a Chief Justice, that culture is starting to erode, and people are starting to see that it is possible.
So, are you optimistic? What do you make of the way the government is performing so far?
I've been actually impressed by some of the laws that have passed in the last several months. I mean, this law, I was a witness at the EDSA celebration where the law giving reparations to human rights victims of the Marcos dictatorship. That is amazing. I would not have thought that possible. The law to stop the way the military goes after people, that stopped. I mean, the RH bill, who would have thought that that could ever pass in a country as dominated by the Catholic Church as the Philippines? Those are, and there are other bills that you wonder, with the dynasty makeup, with the nature of the corrupt system, that certain bills, and of course the amended overseas voting bill. We've been lobbying for that for 10 years, and we didn't ever think at one point that it could ever pass, and finally it did pass. So there's grounds for a lot of optimism about the Philippines.
Right now, the stock market is the third best performing globally. In your eyes, again looking from the outside, do you see this? Is this sustainable?
It is, but a lot of it is also dependent on overseas remittances from people, especially in the Middle East, and that's a very volatile situation. With the Arab Spring and with the economy as volatile as it is. I mean, we're entering sequestration in the U.S. in the next few days. That's going to have global ramifications. So it could affect the employment of overseas Filipinos in Europe, in the Middle East.
And just for sequestration is a continuation of the fiscal cliff, right? This is when for Filipinos who are watching it. Tell me about what's happening now with the Filipinos in the United States who want to vote in the May 2013 elections.
Okay. We've been lobbying. I was just showing a picture. This is when we went to the Philippines in 1986. We had been involved in overthrowing Marcos, at least from the U.S. standpoint, lobbying Congress to withdraw support for the Marcos dictatorship. So when people power occurred, many of us from the U.S. came to the Philippines, and we met President Aquino in Malacanang. And President Aquino asked us, what do you folks want? And we said we wanted two things. We wanted the right to vote in Philippine elections, and we wanted dual citizenship. You know, every country in Europe, every country in South America, they allow for dual citizenship.
Correct.
And there's no reason why when people leave the Philippines or become citizens of the US that they should lose their Philippine citizenship. President Aquino said she would support both.
Yes.
In fact, in the 1987 Constitution, she included a provision for overseas voting, asking Congress to set up a system for overseas voting. From that time on, we've been lobbying every year for overseas voting, and every president who came and there was a forum, we would ask, and they would say, yes, we're supporting it. And it didn't get done until 2003 when the Overseas Absentee Voting Act of 2003 was passed.
Right.
But there was a problem. The one who opposed us was Teddy Boy Locsin, and he said that Filipinos who abandoned the Philippines do not deserve the right to vote. And we were explaining to him that many of the people in the Middle East and others, they didn't abandon the Philippines.
Choice,
they
yeah.
were abandoned by the Philippines
Yes.
because once they were working in virtual slavery, there was no support from the Philippine government. You know,
Right.
as long as the remittances came in, that's all that the Philippines was concerned with. At any rate, Locsin was persuaded to support it, but he included a provision that required that anyone who registered to vote must sign an affidavit of intent to return back to the Philippines within 3 years or face a penalty up to a year imprisonment.
Wow.
And that was a poison pill on it.
Correct.
That we were told half a loaf is better than no loaf at all. So we were assured that that provision was going to remove, but let's just get it in so
Right.
we'd have the right to vote. So once that was in, about 350,000 overseas Filipinos registered to vote, and people voted in 2004. But we were assured that was going to be removed. It never got removed, and 2 years ago, a number of us testified before the Batasan. I was there with
Right.
Loida,
Right.
asking for it to be removed, and none of them knew why it was even included.
Correct.
It didn't make sense because there was no basis for it. Then, and this is the thing that happened. That same week we testified at Batasan, we went to the COMELEC. They had a summit of overseas absentee voting. Chairman Brillantes told us that out of the 350,000 who registered in 2004, 238,455 of them did not vote in the 2007 and 2010 elections. He said that required them to be removed from the voters' rolls. But he said the COMELEC decided not to remove them and to allow them to vote in the May 2013 elections. At that
So
summit,
you were assured
Yes.
that the
Yeah.
voters, the Filipino voters in America could vote?
yes. Now,
Okay.
representatives of those working on the ships testified that the law requires that you can vote only where you registered. There are 245,000 people who work in ships. They don't even remember what port they were
Yes.
when they registered.
Yes.
So how could they go back to register there? Then people in Saudi Arabia, they testified that there are no house numbers in the
Oh, wow.
houses in Saudi Arabia. So how will they receive notices of where they're to vote?
Yes.
Nonetheless, we were assured not to worry. We would be able to vote. That was September 29, 2011. From October 31, 2011 until a year later is the open registration for overseas voting.
Right.
At the end of October 31, 2012, only 300,000 additional voters came, short of the 1 million that the COMELEC targeted. In December, they passed a resolution removing the 238,455 unless they filled out a form indicating or manifesting their intent to vote.
Wow.
So, and only 29 received notice enough to do
wow.
that.
Right.
The point I was making was that why didn't you just remove them in September of 2011? That way, during the 1-year open registration period, they could register and vote. Because once you kept them on the rolls, if they tried to register and vote, they would be told, no, your name's already there,
be
you can't
rejected.
register to vote.
Yes.
So you denied them, and it was detrimental reliance on your word. And it's just frustrating. There was no rhyme or reason for them to do that after they had assured the overseas voters they weren't going to do it. What has been so dismaying is we've been raising this issue,
Yes.
and there's been no traction. We haven't received the newspapers or articles. There hasn't been any focus on it. It's as though people in the Philippines don't really care about people overseas, that the right to vote isn't an issue for people in the Philippines. As long as the remittances come in and the economy is stable because of those remittances, there's a total indifference to the issue of suffrage for overseas Filipinos.